quite a lot of the learning that I took over the last 6 or 7 years since I started writing. So let's hope we can do that. I've got 3 objectives tonight. The first one is to educate. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. The second one is motivate. Now, technically, if I'm going to motivate you to write books, then I'm creating competitors to myself. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, why would you want to do that? So someone's going to ask me now, why would you want to do that, Paul?
Why do you want to do that, Paul?
Well, actually, it's a massively crowded marketplace anyway, and 1 or 2 of you here chuck in a few more books in, it will not make any difference. There are something like 100 million unpublished manuscripts out there. Okay, so let's put that into perspective for you. All right, that still shouldn't stop you. All right, there's plenty of things you can do. Motivate and inspire then. I'd like to think that one of you will come out of the room tonight thinking, yeah, I'm going to have a go at writing a book. I'm going to start. Okay, so if you want to share that at the end, that's fine, but if not, I'm willing to help anyone if they're starting out writing a book. You can do this if you want to, is really where we get into. Okay, but you will have to want to. So the kind of process for writing a book, there are some mechanics. You've got to understand the why you're writing it, first of all. Now, clearly in your case, it would have been something to help you with your physiotherapy and promote your name, etc., etc. Yeah? But it's different for each of us. Okay, Rupert, why did you write an autobiography?
Just to have something to remember my career like, so I do some brain cells by the day. To pass on for the kids.
Yeah.
Basically a collection of memories.
So a bit of legacy stuff. Yeah, that's good. So we're going to talk about the why. We're going to talk about the what. So what do you write? And we're going to talk a little bit about the how. What sort of processes you can use to write. Now, I'm not going to talk about marketing tonight, because I've only got 30 minutes, and marketing is the hard bit. Really is the hard bit. That's a separate talk. So, if we look at the why, we've established that some people want to write non-fiction, autobiography. See? Like Rupert, here's one I prepared earlier. Yeah. We may want to establish credibility or publicity for what we do in our day jobs. Okay. And share specialist knowledge. Yeah? If you're, for example, the only one of your type of career in the area, then that may be a potential big money maker for you. Yeah? In terms of fiction, you might have a particular interest in a specific genre. Yeah? Harry Potter fans, hands up. Ooh, in public as well. Yeah? So you might be a fantasy person, you might be a adult fiction, and I will point out before anyone asks, I have written an adult fiction book. Adult fiction does not mean pornography. Okay? Absolutely not. All right? You might want to tell a story. A lot of survivors of particular disasters like to write stories, yeah, and then they are potentially big money makers. Okay? Or you might be infamous and write a story. I predict Dr. Conrad Murray will write a book within the next year on his version of what happened with Michael Jackson. And, infamous as it is, it'll be a bestseller. Okay? And that's the bad news, guys. If you're an established name, so everyone knows who you are, it's easy to sell a book. Yeah? International jet set in star like Rupert there, no problem. Okay? Joe Public, us, it's a bit harder, but it is possible. Okay? And obviously, some of us like to earn money. Yeah? Especially if you've got a wife like Darth Credit Card. You need to earn it. So there's quite a lot of things that you need to establish up front. Why do you really want to do this? Okay? So if we've settled on the why, then we've got to decide, well, what am I writing? Am I writing fiction or non-fiction? And it is possible to merge the two. Okay? I read a very good book by a guy called Elliot Goldratt. Peter, you might have come across him. He's a management consultant. Okay? Unfortunately for us management consultants, it's not the most interesting of subjects. But Goldratt has managed to write a book that reads like a fiction story. It's a story, it's step by step, and he's based it on life experiences, and it's eminently readable. Right? Now, if you can hit upon a formula like that, it's great. Because you've learned something at the end of the book, and you don't even realize it. Okay, and actually he's a multimillionaire now from the books and many other things. So you've got to decide which one you're going to pick on, fiction or non-fiction. Okay, now I don't write non-fiction at the moment anyway. I'm a fiction writer, so we're going to be talking about fiction tonight. All right, it's my passion. I like the Star Wars, the Star Trek, anything with the word star in. Okay? If Coronation Street had the word star in it, I'd probably watch it. So you've got to decide what you want. So we'll follow the path of one of my books here. Fiction, into the genre of science fiction. Contemporary. Okay, now contemporary means modern times. So we're not 200 or 300 years or 1,000 years into the future. We're now actually for this one. Okay, so you've got to pick that, and then there's a subgenre thriller. Why are people going to read it if it's just sci-fi on its own? Yeah, if you're writing something, you want other people to read it. Okay, you do get a sense of satisfaction when you've written it and you think, oh, I enjoyed that book. But you would. You wrote it. The key to being successful here is other people want to read it, and other people want to not put it down. Okay, if you can achieve that, if you don't make a lot of money, you're a good writer. Okay, so you have to get a clear picture of what it is you're trying to write. Okay, now I had an evolution when I started writing because I didn't start with fantasy or sci-fi. I started with adult fiction, which is not. Come on, it's not pornography. Okay, it was actually based on my early career as a consultant and some of the situations I saw. And the politics that you get in boardrooms and why British industry sometimes seems to be self-defeating. Yeah, we're too busy stabbing each other in the back in the boardroom than we are actually trying to get on with what we do and maintaining what was our rightful place in the world order of manufacturing at one time. Okay, that book came about because another guy that I knew wrote a book. Okay, and I read his book, and honestly, while it was an interesting story, I felt I could do a better one. Yeah? And at the time, that was the burning thing in my life. It was when I was first becoming a consultant. And it's a different mindset moving from when you look after 70 odd people yourself to suddenly not looking after anyone. And if you've got it wrong, it's your own fault. That's bad news. Yeah? So it was a bit of an adjustment. Okay? But it wasn't my passion. There was something else that caused me to write that, and I'll explain what that is. So the what, a little bit about the how in general. It helps to give yourself motivation. Okay, this first book would never have been written unless I dedicated it to my late grandfather, because I don't have the discipline, or I didn't have the discipline to do something like this. This took 3 years, and if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have got written. Okay, so you can give yourself some sort of motivation. It might be you want to write something for your children. A lot of people like to do that. That's where the next lot of books came from. Because this was adult fiction, the kids complained that I wouldn't let them read the other one. And if you ever read it, you'll know why. So I dedicated that to my late grandfather. The second one was dedicated to my daughters. Okay, so the second set of books, actually, starting with this one, the Amika J trilogy. I was sitting next to a swimming pool in Crete, and my kids were doing what everyone's kids do, arguing like hell at the time. And I came up with the idea, well, I wanted something for them to understand a strong family message. So I thought, well, why not write a book and base it on them? Okay, now again, we've got to make it interesting, so this isn't just base it on them as they are in school now. This is actually, we'll transport them to a different world, and we'll give them magic powers. Okay, and we'll do it basing it on their personalities. And just to make it a little bit more logical, if you can have such a thing in fantasy, we'll tie it to their hair color. Now, their hair color dictated their personalities. So my oldest has got long red hair. Okay, so I gave her firepower because she's got a temper like you wouldn't believe, like a typical redhead. Okay, the youngest one is more like a mother, you know, a bit vacant around the place, but very, very gentle child. So I gave her creative powers, yeah? And because it was based on the family, I put myself in there, okay? And I've got these lovely silver sideburns. And based on my personality, I've got a complete and utter lack of patience. So I give myself super speed. Okay? But you've got to consider all of this when you're writing books. What are we going to do to give the book some difference? Yeah? I'll give you another example in that. Harry Potter. We've got some Potter fans. What language do they use for spells in Harry Potter? Latin. Okay? In my books we use? Absolutely right. We use Welsh. Although I did avoid anything that had "och" in it, not to alienate an English audience, English-speaking audience anyway. The sci-fi thriller, the one that I'm currently promoting, Boundary Limit, that was based on a friend who kept on telling me, you need to write books. So it's a bit of a lonely life being a writer. So if you've got a friend like that, it's worth dedicating a book to them. Because some people don't encourage you to write. I'll tell you a story about one of those in a minute. So you've understood what you're doing, you've understood why you're doing it. So we're into setting yourself an objective. Okay, so how do we start this off? All right, now I've seen lots of stories around and recommendations, 2 pages a day. How many people think they could write 2 pages a day? Well, if you don't think so, I reckon you could. Okay, 2 pages a day isn't difficult. And if you think about it, if you're concentrating on just 2 pages, you can make that writing a lot better than if you're trying to write 20 or 30 pages. Okay? And there's a bit of maths in this that shows you how quickly you can turn it into a book. But before you get into that, you've got to think about, well, what's the plot? We've got to have a plot, haven't we? Yeah? So for Boundary Limit, I used a technique called mind maps. Now, other people may have used mind maps. Yeah? A great technique for creativity, particularly this sort of stuff. So what did I want in my book? Well, Boundary Limit, sci-fi fantasy, sci-fi thriller. It's contemporary. It's using the SAS. Okay? And you've got to be careful with that because the SAS is quite overused nowadays. There's loads of books about the SAS. Andy McNabb, Chris Ryan. Yeah? So mine had to be different. I think someone described it as it was Andy McNabb until it turned into Star Trek halfway through. Okay? So again, that's how do you differentiate yourself in terms of being an author. But you know, what were the elements? Well, I wanted to set it in the Large Hadron Collider. Anyone come across the Large Hadron Collider? The Doom machine? The one that's going to turn the planet into a black hole? Yeah? Dan Brown used it as well. I was there first. Sod. Yes, he talked about using it to generate antimatter. But there's been lots of doomsayers around this. A lot of religious people believe it's an affront to God. And there's actually quite a lot of stories about the Hadron Collider and how it's had lots and lots of accidents because some people believe that God or the universe is trying to stop us from actually using it. Fantastic material for a sci-fi author. Absolutely fantastic. Okay? Wikipedia, spot on for doing research for novels. Okay? But I did happen to come across Times magazine that featured the Large Hadron Collider as well. And one of my bits of advice for today is if you're doing a book and you're using contemporary stuff, there's loads of stuff around you. Look for it, research it, and sometimes it'll just appear when you're not looking for it. Yeah, I just happened to come across the Large Hadron Collider magazine after I'd been messing around on Wikipedia for it. So we're going to have a destination, Batavia. Anyone know where Batavia is? It's where the Large Hadron Collider is. It's in the borders of Switzerland and France. Okay? So, having said that, we'll have some French people. We'll have a French Special Forces contingent join to us. Okay? And let's throw a twist in. Our SAS team, they don't like the French. The French are an inferior Special Forces. Why would they want to join up with them? So we've got tension in the story. Now, because this is a particular genre, we have to have some love interest. There's no sex in Boundary Limit, by the way. Yeah, I haven't got anything to base it on in real life. So we've got a lady doctor in there. We've got some terrorists. I had to look around for some terrorist names, something that sounded vaguely Arabic, because they were going to be Arabic in nature. But we gave the main bad guy a semi-French name to give more legitimacy to the French. So we had Mahmoud Sabak. Sabak is a French name. Okay? Down here, what are the antagonists or the protagonists? Well, we've got the bad guys. There's the head bad guy. We've got some creatures, because this is sci-fi after all. And we've got to give our special forces a test, so we make the creatures bulletproof. Yeah? So how do we kill them? Well, you'll have to read the book to find out. And we have got a setting in London, okay? And the setting in London was important because it gave the book context, all right? So I don't think it's giving too much away. You've read the first chapter, yeah? The first chapter in London, the main hero, Blake Trouble, his wife and children get killed in the London 7/7 bombings on the bus. Yeah, because there's been a lot of talk about the tubes, but the bus was left out. So we find out why he's really, really not happy with terrorists. And to give it some spice, there's the guy who's responsible for the bus. Okay? So we've got a lot of tension, but you come up with a mind map first. You can check things on it. Actually, book titles don't always end up the way they start out. Boundary Limit was called The Other Side first, then it was called Crossover, and in the end it got called Boundary Limit. Don't worry about that when you're writing. The title will come to you in the end. So here's something Peter recognized. Plan, do, check, act. So you're into your writing, you've planned it. So we're going to do some do. Start writing. Your opening chapter, if you're reading fiction, if you're writing fiction, must hook a reader or publisher. The very first chapter has to be punchy as hell. Because if it isn't, if you're like me, I've read the first couple of pages and I'm not reading anymore. Don't waste my time. Okay, it's not like TV. You know, you sometimes watch that really late film, the B movie, and you get to the end of it and you think, why on earth did I sit through that? Books aren't like that. You won't get past the first 5 or 6 minutes of a book if it's not very good. Okay, so it's got to hook the reader or publisher. All right, because that'll depend on which path you're going down, whether you're going to self-publish or whether you're going to try a conventional publisher. And just to give you some perspective, J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter author, she had over 20 rejections from different publishers, and it took her 5 years to get her first book published. Okay, look where she is now. By the way, my target is only 10% of her profits. Yeah, but she's the only billionaire author on the planet, so that'll do me nicely. Very clever woman. So, some other considerations we have to make while we're going along. Do we use chapters? Okay, or do we have breaks inside chapters? Okay, Dan Brown, if anyone read any Dan Brown? Yeah, Dan Brown, if you notice, his chapter's really short sometimes. And the more tense the situation, the shorter the chapter, because we're moving very quickly. But because he does it that way, you don't want to put the book down. Yeah, so that's a style that's hooked you. Okay, he's very clever with that. So are we making it easy to pick up and put down? All right, because we're all very busy people, and when we read a book, we want to be able to find a place to finish logically so that you can pick it up next time quite easily. If you've got very long chapters, that's not easy, and it annoys people. Okay, Dan Brown's definitely got that right. Here's a checkpoint. After you've done 3 chapters, or 10,000 words, 10,000 words sounds a lot, but it's not actually. You'd be surprised how quickly you can do that. You can start then using external reviewers to see, are you on the right track? In other words, has what you've written appealed to someone else apart from yourself? Okay? Here's a website that helps you do that. It's called Autonomy. It's run by HarperCollins, which is a rather large publisher anyway. You can post 3 chapters, 10,000 words on their website, and other writers will look at it and give you feedback. Okay? It's a bit like the X Factor for writers as well, because if you get into the top 5 at the end of any given month, then HarperCollins themselves will review your work with a view to offering a publishing contract. Okay? However, it is like the X Factor in terms of a popularity contest. All right? It's not how good your work is. It's whether you voted for other people that gets you up there, and it takes a lot of time. But it's fine for you to get a bit of a perspective up front on whether you've got anything that people want to read. And you can learn from other writers as well. Okay? I'd say I put Boundary Limit on there, the first 3 or 4 chapters, and I got nearly all positive feedback, okay, except for one guy who wasn't negative but was very, very constructive. Fantastic. Okay, because as a writer, believe it or not, what you don't want is for everyone to tell you, oh, it's brilliant. Worst thing you can have. Because you think that, and you think you don't have to work on it to enhance it and make it better. That's why you've got to be very careful with who you ask to review. Did you ask any of your family to review your autobiography first?
Two or three different people who are most awkward that I knew.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And what sort of feedback did you get?
Cross-section, and it was interesting that they look it through rose-tinted glasses.
Yes.
So we did what you said, cut it down, and it would look like shit.
Yes.
And it would look shit.
Good. Helps to know that a famous author has actually used some of these techniques. I think I've mentioned this already. As you write, be aware of current events or what goes on around you. I'll give you a story about that. Darth credit card. Not a fan of my writing because it takes up my time and means that I'll ignore anything that she's asking me to do. It was a lovely sunny Saturday morning. I was at the bedroom on my laptop in full flow, actually on this book, the second in my fantasy trilogy. Okay, up she comes. I want to go shopping. I'm writing. I don't care. I want to go shopping. Now this went on for about 2 minutes before her patience went. You've not earned anything off them. It's a pile of crap. You're wasting your time. Okay? Most destructive criticism you can have. All right? And either I could have really gone up the wall or do what I did. This book is based on my family. And up until then, she wasn't in it. Suddenly she was. And you've read this book, Kat. Right? So, my wife's character, which is called Amanda in there, but I usually shorten her name around the house to Mandy. We open the chapter to her being tortured, force-fed dog food, and made to do a business in the corner in front of the guards. Okay?
And when she divorced you get then?
The promise of royalties. Okay? So you can use what goes on around you and what influences you. Go on.
I've written a few things, and I wrote some poems and sets of music about one of my ex-boyfriends, and I performed them in clubs in London, and then posted them in a copyright, so I called it a
Right. I'm not brave enough for that.
You were really nice with it.
And I,
Very popular, but
yeah,
it's very good to write.
it's
With something that you know.
it can be very therapeutic as well, because I felt a lot better after force feeding her dog food. I have to be honest.
Has she read that?
No, she doesn't read books. All her friends are saying, "Have you read Paul's books? You were in it." No, she doesn't read them, luckily. So you can use what goes on around you and what influences you. And remember, as a writer, you're the most powerful person on the planet when it comes to imagination. You have to give your characters problems in books, okay? Otherwise, life's too easy. So if we send the SAS in, one of the most ruthless bunch of killers that we've got working for us, luckily. But if they just could kill everything easily in the novel, then I would have maybe done 30 pages. Yeah? But we make people bulletproof. Oh, that's a different complexion at all. Now we've got to work out, well, how are we going to kill these things? Okay? And there's an analogy with writing books and problem solving, because books are all about coming up with problems and solutions that are not predictable by your readers. Okay? So, you know, you've all watched films and you thought, oh, I know what's going to happen next, and you're right. Yeah? That's not a good film. You want to get to the end of the film and think, oh yeah, that's why that happened. That's much, much harder. Okay? And books need the same sort of cues as films as well. Again, you've watched a film probably, and maybe a guy will stick his foot up there, he'll stick a knife down his boot, and then put his trousers down and walk off. Okay? 20 minutes later, he'll use the knife in that boot to kill someone. Now, what if they hadn't showed you putting that knife in the boot? What would you have said? Where did you get that from? Books are the same. You've got to plant cues in them quite early on, and they've got to be logical. Okay? You have to give your characters issues and motivation. Okay? You don't have to make them all psychotic. Right? I mean, as I said, the main protagonist in Boundary Limit is a guy called Blake Trouble. And again, Trouble, the name was chosen deliberately, so I can play with the word. Yeah, because he's a major in the SAS. So I can say things like, you want trouble? Have major trouble. Yeah, play on words. People like that. Well, certainly in that genre they do. His family's dead. He's out for revenge. We've given him an issue. Yeah, and actually he's told to capture the terrorist alive. He's just killed his family. Do you think he really wants to do that? Yeah, so you're giving your character something that people will associate with. And then we twist it. One of the things in Boundary Limit is, yeah, he's really out to get this terrorist. But actually, halfway through, we're attacked by whatever these things are. And the only way they're going to survive is if they all band together. So suddenly, he's got to work with the terrorists that he can't stand. Yeah? So, again, something to bring a bit of tension into the story. So, how much do you write? Well, for a novel, you're looking at 80,000 to 100,000 words, which translates to around 300 pages. Okay? This is my biggest book. It's 130,000 words. But all the others are around the 100,000 word mark, say about 300 pages. If you write 2 pages a day, as I suggested at the start, you'll have your book written in 150 days. So how much is that in a year? Not even half. Suddenly, writing it becomes achievable. Yeah? Provided you don't come up with writer's block, and I'm not going to talk about that. It doesn't happen to me, I'm lucky. Okay? The amount of time it takes for this, my average to write a book, in reality, the first one took 3 years, but every one since then has taken about 6 months. And that's because I now have a process that I follow. Yeah? Plus plugs for the wife. Yeah? Good quality ones. A little bit about titles, covers, and blurbs. Your title has to be unusual and linked to the genre. Okay? So fantasy, we have to have outlandish names. Fiction, science fiction, well, something that makes you think, especially if it's contemporary, about things now. Covers must be eye-catching, but cheap is just as good. Okay? I don't know if, well, you can all have a look at these after and have a look at what you think of the covers. £40 to have that cover designed by an ex-BNI member, Matthew Pugh. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be expensive. So the blurb is the back of the book. You know, the bit that's going to make you decide whether you're going to buy it or not. Yeah? So the blurb has to be punchy, give a lot of impact, and not give too much of the story away. Because if you do that, then they're not going to want to read it, are they? Yeah? It's almost like letting them read the last page. Yeah? It's not good practice. So the moment of truth, you've got your book, or you've got a manuscript rather than the book. So now you need to order a draft. Okay? You want something to hold in your hand so that you can read it and give it to other people to review for you. All right? Now, that is very, very cheap to do nowadays. I use this particular site for these. It's called lulu.com. To get one of those back, they cost about £5 each. Okay? It's different if you try to sell them on the website because they add a markup. But if you want to buy them as the author, they're about £5 each for 300 pages. It takes me about 30 minutes from actually going onto the Lulu website to when I'm actually able to order a book. It's a very, very simple process. They've really thought about it. Okay? And I can have that book in my hand within 5 to 7 days. Okay? Very, very easy to do. And this is when some of the harder work comes in, the editing. How much time do you spend editing, Rupert? Yeah. And the problem is, as a writer, you're not always the best person to edit it. Because what you think might be obvious because you've written it isn't obvious to anyone else. So you need people who are going to be very constructive. And you're looking for things like grammar. Okay, is the grammar right? Does it sound correct? If it doesn't sound if it doesn't sound correct, is that because it's meant to sound like that or because you've made a mistake? Is there logic to what we're doing? Right? I've had a problem in the past where I've started off calling a character one thing, it's a minor character, and by the end of the book he's called something completely different. Okay, so you've got to check for logic and continuity. Right, so the story has flowed properly. Classic one, spelling. If it's on default US, it's going to annoy the crap out of you. All right, it's going to tell you everything that's got a Z in it or an X in it is wrong. Yeah. Or if something like connect, C-O-N-N-E-C-T, connection, might be with an X in American. It's strange. You have to use what I call beta readers. Right? Karen was a beta reader for me, and a nag, which is good when you're a writer actually, because you need people around nag you to finish the book. But here's the key: make sure feedback's honest. Now Rupert had it right by giving it to the most awkward people he could find. Right? Feedback that isn't honest is no good to you. Right? And while you might think you've written the next bestseller, actually people will be telling you, well, yeah, it was good. And then they'll tell the other people you've asked, well, actually, it was all right, wasn't it? But it had this problem with it. No good to you. You want to know. We don't have time. Nearly finished. Okay, bit of facts about publishing. If you're going to go for a conventional publisher, unless you're a superstar and have an established name, it is very, very difficult. So difficult that actually 1 in 1,000 submissions get published, and out of those, 1 in 1,000 then become bestsellers. Okay? And if you want to go down that path, you have to write a synopsis, which I find very, very hard to do, because I've just spent 6 months writing 100,000 words, and the publisher wants me to compress it into 2 pages. It's very difficult. Okay? You have to write a proposal or covering letter to go with it, and you have to provide sample chapters. I can't be doing with it. All right? I've not got the patience for it. There is an alternative. 3 ways. You can vanity publish, which is you pay a publisher to do it for you, and probably still not very well accepted if you do that. Okay? People don't call you a real writer if you do it. This one's a slightly better option, which is where you go for a joint venture, which you share the costs with a publisher. All right? So instead of it costing you one of these, vanity publisher, 10 grand. Venture publisher, 3. Okay? Agent for Change is venture published. Only I had it a lot cheaper than that because there's a special deal on it, just for me. This is the one that I'd recommend if you want to start book writing now, is full self-publishing, solo. Okay? There's plenty of places you can do it. There's the one I've already mentioned, Lulu. You can write ebooks. I haven't really talked much about ebooks, right? But all of those are available as ebooks or books. Because in America at the moment, the Kindle and the rest of them are massive, and they will be in this country at some point. Okay? So I would even recommend you write the ebook first, because it's easier to do. So you can go on to Amazon Kindle DTP, digital text platform. Smashwords. Smashwords will put it on Kindle, Sony Reader, iPad, Barnes & Noble, Nookbooks, everything. If you want a physical book, then you can use Lulu. You can use CreateSpace, which is a subsidiary of Amazon. Didn't cost me anything to publish through them. Boundary Limit is published through CreateSpace. This one. Okay. Again, for me to buy it, it's about £5. For a person to actually buy it from CreateSpace, it's about 10 quid with the delivery. There's another one you can use called Lightning Source, which is an Ingram imprint. Now, Ingram are not very well known. They're not like Amazon, but they are massive. They're a huge publisher and distributor. Last thing about ebooks. They are a revolution. I want to mention 2 names to you. One's John Locke, and the other one's Amanda Hocking. Both of them are millionaires. John Locke has earned over $1 million as a self-published ebook publisher. He's never touched a physical book. Okay. Amanda Hocking has just been offered a £2 million contract with a conventional publisher after earning on average $100,000 a month from ebooks. Okay. I'm not sure what John Locke writes, but Amanda Hocking writes Twilight stuff. He says a little contemptuously. Yeah, you know, the teen romance vampire type stuff. Okay, big money to be made. If you want to look those 2 up, they've got really good stories, and they're happy to share them as well. And that's it, really. Those are my books. There's samples here if you want to have a look. there's my blog, my Twitter, and my Facebook fan page. And if anyone wants to purchase a copy of Boundary Limit as a Christmas present or whatever for a loved one, then I've got a stock available here tonight at $8.99, and I'll sign them for whoever you want them to. Any questions? No?
Yeah, I got a good point. When you're on about, because you keep, obviously you're talking about hardback publishing, but being an online marketer, I've just seen the value of them on the ebook side. Because like you mentioned Amazon Kindle there, and I mean everybody in this room that I've seen so far have all been an expert at something, so they're all quite capable of writing a lot smaller book than what you're talking about, but at least getting it published on Amazon. Because I'll tell you one of the things I found, which I actually wrote my first book, was a 40-page instruction after I'd done a workshop, and I said to everybody I'd send them notes, and it ended up 40 bloody pages long, and I just went, there's my book. Put it up on Amazon, and now a published author hadn't printed it from a local printer, £2 each, gave them out, and all of a sudden you're a local authority.
Absolutely.
So I think Amazon is, for what you're talking about, Amazon is very powerful.
Amazon's massive. And there are tricks to writing these books as well. I haven't mentioned this, but if anyone a blogger? Yeah? Rupert, you do blogs as well, eh? We've given up, eh? Right, if you're a blogger, you can use your blogs to turn into books, depending on how you write them. Because if you write something on a subject that you are the expert in your blog, then you can take that off the blog, stick it into a Word manuscript, it becomes a PDF, which becomes an ebook. And the good thing about ebooks as well, particularly for non-fiction, is you can have reference links inside them that'll take you to the reference point, whereas if you've got one of these, of course you're looking for HTTP, www, you've got to type all that in. Well, you don't need to do that with an ebook. Yeah? Ebooks are going to be the new revolution. Okay? The reason I've got both is because in Wales we're a bit parochial. We still like to have a book in our hand. All right? So I've catered for both markets. But ebooks is a massive potential thing. That's where John Locke and Amanda Hockin have made their money. It's all ebooks.
But the other interesting thing I found with ebooks though was I bought a Kindle last November for my wife purely because I'd done this ebook and I wanted to know what it looked like on a Kindle. So I bought her a Kindle. She's never put the Kindle down since because we used to buy about 3 to 4 books a week from the likes of Asda and whatever. Never put. But what was more interesting, she now reads more authors because Kindle allows you to look at that first chapter or so.
They promote things as well, don't they? And there's a lot of promotions with Kindle. Amazon, if you're on their mailing list, they send you stuff all the time. Now, as an author on Kindle, then I get a lot of stuff sent to me as well. You know, because I write fantasy books, I get offers on other people's fantasy books. Yeah. Amazon, I've got a good market there. Yeah. But again, if you want to really get published, there's your biggest opportunity is ebooks on Amazon.
How do you get paid from Kindle?
What they do is they collect X amount of fees. So I'll say I sell 40 books in a month. Once it reaches $10 and up, they'll send you a check. Or if you're an American citizen, they'll, depending on, I'm on Amazon.com, they'll actually pay it by their equivalent of backs. Yeah, but you have to accumulate first. I think it's $10, and then it's the second month after you've gone on there originally. So, if you publish with CreateSpace, a physical book, there is a complication in that because it's an American company, and you have to complete an American IRS tax declaration because we've got a treaty with them. That means we pay tax in this country, not over there. Okay, it is a bit of a complication, but it's not insurmountable. Yeah, I'm going to try Lightning Source next, which is UK based, so it'll be without the complication of filling in IRS forms. But if you do go down the American route, you only fill the form in once. Any other questions? Okay, well, you're welcome to come over and have a look at these, and if you want a copy of Boundary Limit, as I say, I've got some stock available. Okay. Since last night, then. Since last night.
I know I thought about it, but when you break it all down, you think it is possible, but it's also